In the last episode, Rick finally reunited with Michonne, the one he had longed for deeply, and brought her to the Civic Republic. However, for safety reasons, Rick insisted that Michonne lie during the interrogation and hide her true identity. Everything was going smoothly until an unexpected twist occurred. Someone saw through the facade.
Hi, Rick. Sorry for breaking in.
That person was none other than Jotties, the one who had brought Rick to the Civic Republic in the first place. Their entanglement can be traced back 7 years. At that time, Rick had been severely injured and was discovered by Jotties by chance. He was then taken aboard a helicopter, disappearing without a trace. About a month later, when Rick woke up, he found himself in a hospital. This place was guarded by a large, formidable military force, and it was part of a mysterious organization known as the Civic Republic. Newcomers to the Civic Republic were given the lowest status of consignees, who had to kill zombies for 6 years before being allowed to live in the main city. Rick observed the surroundings. The streets were clean and orderly. Every house was occupied, and there was even wind-powered electricity. It was all incredibly beautiful, as if it had returned to the way it was before the end of the world. For most consignees, their wish was to endure the 6-year trial period as quickly as possible, but there was no joy on Rick's face. All he wanted was to go home. At that moment, a familiar voice spoke from behind him.
Not a fry guy? Looking for a fancier place? There's a decent spot this way.
Rick's face wasn't looking too good, and it was this woman who had brought him here. Jotties knew Rick had countless questions. She said, "Back when I was the leader of the scavengers, I already had contact with someone from the Civic Republic. He proposed an exchange. I would provide useful and threatening individuals, and they would supply us with resources." After explaining, Jotties warned Rick, "If anyone asks what your goal is, tell them you're looking for someone worth following. Then show your capabilities. That's the only way you'll advance here." But Rick was holding back a flood of anger.
You brought me somewhere. I can't leave.
Could have chosen to let you die on the riverbed. Told them you were a threat. CRM doesn't take chances. But I did. Because I owed you.
Why aren't you working consignment?
Jotties froze at the question. She didn't say another word, suppressing a smirk. Rick was not stupid. He instantly understood that he was this woman's cargo. Jotties didn't deny it. She even smiled and nodded. By providing valuable people to the Civic Republic, Jotties avoided the consignee trials of killing zombies and could join the Civic Republic military directly. Jotties' ambitions were significant. She planned to climb step by step to become a leading figure in the military. She enthusiastically described her vision of the future and urged Rick not to be stubborn, to stay and prove his worth. Together, they could become leading figures in the military.
I'm going home.
Well, your bliss, Rick. But I did save your life. That is what happened.
Their conversation ended on a sour note, and for the following years, they did not meet again. Fast forward to the present, as Michonne was being interrogated in the Civic Republic. Rick barely had time to wash his face before knocking on the door of his partner, Pearl. Rick and Pearl were both talented individuals recruited by Okafor, engaged in a secret plan to reform the military, which fostered a bond between them. Rick got straight to the point. "A woman saved me. She's waiting to be assigned, and I don't want her sent elsewhere. Could you step in and request her for your team? If I advocate for her, it'll look like I'm acting out of emotion."
Are you here, Rick? Are you?
I understand now. I told him just before. You were right.
Rick's declaration of loyalty to Okafor successfully softened Pearl's attitude. Seeing this, Rick took it a step further and suggested Pearl groom Michonne as a trusted confidant, citing the continuation of Okafor's legacy as his reason.
You helped me. I'm here. She should be too.
In the end, Pearl agreed to help. With Pearl's intervention, Michonne smoothly remained in the district, becoming an ordinary consignee. Only then did Rick feel at ease as he returned to his quarters, but just as he closed the door, he heard a familiar voice. It was Jotties. After years of absence, she had risen to become a mid-level leader. She was here because she had recognized Michonne, and her status was built on trading Rick. If Rick and Michonne caused any trouble, she would be implicated as well. In the past, although Rick had once tried to escape, Jotties knew the immense power of the Civic Republic. Rick could never succeed, but now things were different. In Jotties' eyes, if Rick and Michonne teamed up, they could destroy everything. Jotties got straight to the point. Michonne and that small guy are partners, aren't they? They killed all the soldiers, but don't worry, This matter stays between you and me, but I have to warn you, if you two try to escape and it affects my advancement in the military, I will ensure that everyone you love meets a tragic end, including a few I personally admire.
You have to know that. I'm certain that you do. I've had to do things like that. My hands are already covered in blood. They can't get any bloodier. So, I have to ask you this question. Rick, what the doing?
Rick remained silent, maintaining a composed gaze at Jotties while rage built inside him.
You're thinking about killing me.
I will. But not today.
Jotties wasn't naive. She knew what Rick was capable of in the post-apocalyptic world and would never give him a chance to act. Taking a sip of her drink, she added, "Just in case something happens to me, I've put a small file among my personal belongings. It details our past and everyone connected to you. If you try to escape, you will leave with information about this city and the military. I think you know better than anyone that the Civic Republic military's retrieval team would eliminate everyone linked to you."
She doesn't belong here.
Then she shouldn't have come here. But that was her choice. If you try with her, everyone back home dies.
Why? Why?
Security and secrecy above all. And I will not jeopardize everything I've made happen for myself. I won't wait for them to find you, and they will find you. I'm a believer, Rick. She's very, very lucky. They suspect that she's an A, but they still let her in. Thorne stepped up. Did you do that? Wow. You pulled that off. So have your life together here. We are the last light of the world.
With that, Jotties stood up to leave, confident that Rick would make the right choice. The consignees struck the walls with their weapons, creating a noise and waiting silently for the zombies to come. Michonne was among them. Rick had warned Michonne to hide her true strength while fighting zombies, to avoid drawing attention from the higher-ups. Notably, Rick Grimes's name was still written on the nearby high wall, marking the record for the most kills in a single day. Back to the present, zombies approached, and the other consignees were tense despite the wall between them and the approaching horde. Michonne, on the other hand, appeared relaxed. Killing zombies in this way felt like children playing games, but now, she had to pretend to be as clumsy as the others when stabbing the zombies, even going so far as to act like she was putting in great effort. About an hour later, all the zombies were slaughtered, and the consignees resumed clearing the corpses. It seemed that while the Civic Republic's military had committed many despicable acts, it was still a place that many survivors aspired to join. Cleo whispered to Michonne, "Newcomers go through an evaluation period of 3 to 6 days. If you show strong skills, you'll be put to good use. I'm glad to be grouped with someone capable like you."
I'm just happy to be with someone new who knows their shit.
You don't know if I know my shit?
Nah, I got a good idea. You radiate shit knowing.
Possibly distracted by talking, Cleo made a mistake, stumbled, and fell to the ground. What she didn't notice was that a few of the zombies weren't fully dead and were slowly getting back up. The soldiers in the distance saw this and immediately sprang into action, but they were too far away to reach her in time. Michonne had no choice but to drop the stretcher, grab a nearby weapon, and effortlessly decapitate one of the zombies. Cleo stood there, stunned. There was no way Michonne's prowess was that of an ordinary person. The soldiers surrounded Michonne, praising her for her actions, while Cleo became even more convinced of her intuition. Michonne was a powerful leader. Rick, just returning from a mission, had a rough idea of what had happened. He wanted to ask Michonne if she was hurt, but under these circumstances, he couldn't. They had to pretend they didn't know each other. They could only exchange glances, acknowledging each other with subtle looks. At that moment, Rick turned and saw soldiers reporting to Pearl, clearly recounting what had just happened. Rick felt a pang of worry. The more Michonne's abilities were revealed, the more attention she would draw. Soon after, all the soldiers gathered as Major General Beale presided over Okafor's memorial service. Rick felt conflicted. Even though he disliked the place, Okafor had protected him through multiple failed escape attempts over the years, earning a measure of Rick's reluctant gratitude. After the memorial service, Rick and Pearl walked out with mixed feelings. They had been trusted confidants of Okafor, developing plans to reform the military together. Now that their leader was gone, should they continue? As they spoke, Major General Beale approached with a smile.
I keep thinking pharmacon, an ancient Greek word meaning both poison and the cure. I think about that when your name comes up, Grimes. Thing is, I'm not sure about you. Thorne, I need to speak with you privately. Let's take a ride.
Yes, sir.
Major General Beale took Pearl away for a private conversation, likely to discuss something of significant importance. Rick knew that, in the eyes of the top leadership, he was full of uncertainty. He didn't care much about whether he would be valued by the higher-ups. He only hoped that whatever happened wouldn't affect Michonne. Later that night, Rick's door was knocked upon. It turned out that Major General Beale had summoned Pearl to promote her to Sergeant Commander, essentially placing her in Okafor's former position. This meant that from now on, Pearl was Rick's direct superior. Pearl was visibly excited. She took a large gulp of alcohol to steady herself before speaking to Rick. After my promotion, Major General Beale disclosed everything to me, all the secrets of the Civic Republic. But for now, you don't have clearance to know. In terms of faction dynamics, Okafor was preparing to lead Pearl and Rick in a plan to break away and take some alternative actions under Beale's command. But now, with Okafor gone and Pearl suddenly promoted, the taste of power had her captivated. Whether Pearl would still join Rick in honoring Okafor's legacy remained to be seen. Power changes many things once it's within reach. Pearl adopted a leader's tone and said to Rick, "I need you to continue overseeing the construction of the forward base. In a few months, all top leaders will convene there for a summit, and nothing can go wrong. And they've asked me about the consignee Dana Bethune. Out of the 17,000 people in the military, they've zeroed in on her. I don't care what your relationship with that woman is, but she's affecting my progress now. I'm climbing the ladder to power and can't let her hold me back, so you need to deal with it quickly." After saying this, Pearl left the room directly, but at the moment before leaving the door, she suddenly turned around.
What? No salute? Good night, Sergeant Major.
Good night, Command, Sergeant Major.
The conversation left Rick unsettled. Although Pearl's promotion was beneficial for his own prospects, he didn't care about that at all. Michonne was his main concern. Rick took out a map and the notes from previous escape routes, beginning to plan anew. They had to leave as soon as possible. Who knew what might happen next? The next afternoon, after killing zombies, the consignees were enjoying their meal. Michonne noticed Rick approaching, holding what looked like a piece of paper. She understood the signal and, after arranging her tray, walked over. Rick had once told her he would use notes to convey messages and that she must burn them after reading. 3 minutes later, Michonne found a secluded corner and opened the note. It read, "The time has come. We leave tonight. The path has been cleared for you." Following Rick's instructions, Michonne went to the consignee's locker area and found locker number 678. Inside was a key to exit the building, along with a map of the route out. She followed the route, which led her to a dimly lit passage where the growls of zombies echoed. At first, she braced for a fight but realized as she ran closer that the zombies were securely tied up in small compartments. Michonne couldn't help but smile. It was clear Rick had already taken care of it. About half an hour later, Michonne arrived at the designated meeting spot, scanning excitedly for Rick's figure. Tonight, she could finally go home, but after a while, all she found was a small, camouflaged boat and the body of a woman wearing consignee clothing floating in the water. At this moment, Michonne seems to understand something. In theory, shouldn't Rick have prepared 2 bodies as stand-ins? She whispered his name, but there was no response. She began searching among the reeds for clues. On the boat was a backpack, a few glow sticks, and a net pouch with a note inside. It read, "My love, I'm not coming with you. If you don't take this chance to go, you'll never get out, and we'll both die here. This is the only way for you to return to Judith. I must stay behind. Just in case, I will always love you." Tears welled up in Michonne's eyes. She didn't understand why. Had this man's feelings changed? She had fought so hard to find him, and she hadn't even told Rick that he had a son. Does power really make people lose themselves? But Rick's true intentions were different. The escape route he planned for Michonne was full of flaws, easily detected by a cursory investigation by the soldiers. And then there was Jadi's a ticking time bomb. If he and Michonne escaped together, Jadi's would undoubtedly betray them to secure her position. If he stayed behind, things would be different. They could hold each other in check, and he might even find a way to use Jadi's to his advantage.
I don't believe that, Rick.
She didn't know she was leaving without me.
You still want to kill me, Rick? You still see that?
Maybe I was just dreaming.
Rick smiled slightly and continued, "I can't kill you if you die. the documents about our hometown will still be found. I've set up a body to impersonate Michonne. The body's head has been smashed beyond recognition. You need to use your authority to investigate and report that she fell, hit her head on a rock, and was eaten by zombies. Now, our fates are intertwined. If you don't do this, I'll reveal everything, and neither of us will come out of this unscathed. Jadis was speechless, but she had no choice but to agree.
You say you did it for her. I'm sure that is true. But I wonder if there isn't something else that's keeping you here? Again, I did save your life.
Well, now you get to save hers. You're a hero. With a haircut.
After Jadis left, the weight in Rick's chest finally eased. Just then, his pager buzzed. It was his superior, Pearl, calling for him. Rick hurried to the consignee's battlefield. Pearl had fully embraced her leadership role. She turned to Rick and said, "Look." Following her gaze, Rick's eyes fell on a familiar figure among the consignees. It was none other than Michonne. She hadn't left. How was that possible? Pearl, of course, had no idea about the real situation. The trouble she was referring to was that Rick had once categorized Michonne as a B-level individual, someone with limited abilities. But now, this woman was displaying exceptional skill, killing zombies at 3 times the speed of her companions. The other consignees had stopped what they were doing, staring in shock at what was unfolding. Rick felt a wave of dread wash over him. He understood immediately Michonne was angry with him. Michonne had spent the previous night thinking long and hard. She suspected Rick was clinging to power and refused to leave because of it. She originally wanted to leave, but after much thought, she decided to stay. She wanted to see if she could awaken the man she once knew. However, Michonne was unaware of Rick's difficult position and even less aware of the consequences of revealing her true abilities. Being exceptionally skilled would draw the attention of the upper echelon. Those with exceptional abilities would inevitably draw the attention of the higher-ups. However, if they showed signs of defiance or failed to comply with the authorities, the leadership would eliminate any potential threats without hesitation. Rick himself had been lucky that Okafor had seen potential in him. Otherwise, he would have been dead long ago. What would Michonne's fate be? Could Rick and Michonne ever escape the Civic Republic? Stay tuned for the exciting content of the next episode.